There has been no sign of life.
Does she have that kind of
But I'm
face on
going
the
to tell
ground?
you, too, there's been no sign of death.
He covered his face. He covered his hair. He covered his hands. He covered the camera. He covered almost everything. Almost. 2 strips of exposed skin. His eyebrows. His mustache. That is all he left behind. And in those 2 details, forensic analysts, behavioral specialists, and facial recognition experts have spent 47 days building the answer to the question this entire country cannot stop asking. Who took Nancy Guthrie? The footage was not supposed to exist. The camera had been physically removed from its mount. He had stood on that porch in the early hours of February 1st, 2026, reached up with his gloved hand, and taken it down. He had prepared for that moment specifically. What he did not prepare for was one word: residual. The fragments a system generates in the process of functioning that remain in back-end infrastructure even after the device goes dark. The FBI went directly to Google. Google gave them back what the suspect believed he had destroyed forever. In what came back, there was almost a face. Balaclava pulled tight, ski mask layered beneath it, gloves tucked into sleeves, hood drawn forward. Every decision this person made before walking onto that porch was a decision about erasure, about becoming no one. He had thought of everything except the 2 inches above his mask. Forensic analysts have now decoded those 2 inches completely. What they produced is not a theory. It is a composite. A portrait assembled from evidence specific enough to narrow the suspect pool from millions to a number investigators can work with. That composite is what this video delivers, and by the time you reach the final word, you will understand why 47 days after Nancy Guthrie disappeared, the person who stood on that porch is running out of time faster than he knows. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old, sharp as a tack. Those are the words of the Puma County Sheriff, a man who knows his community. On January 31st, she sat down to dinner with people who love her. She has friends she prays with every week on a video call. Faithful, every week without exception. On February 1st, they opened their devices and waited. The screen stayed empty. Nancy was not there. She has not been seen since. Her friends are still waiting. This video is a step toward bringing her home. He knew about that camera. That is the detail that separates this from every ordinary crime, or he did not stumble onto that porch and panic. He walked toward the camera deliberately. He knew exactly where it was mounted. He knew exactly which direction the lens faced, and he knew that Nancy Guthrie had a Nest doorbell system that without an active cloud recording subscription was not saving continuous footage anywhere. That last piece of knowledge is the one that almost worked in his favor. Without a paid cloud subscription, the Nest camera cannot remember. It can see. It can alert. But under normal circumstances, whatever it witnesses dies with it. A person with detailed knowledge of that household, with time spent inside that home, with familiarity with how the technology worked and how the billing was set up, would know this, would factor it into a plan. Dow would walk onto that porch with confidence that whatever the camera witnessed would disappear when the camera did. He removed it from its mount. He believed he had erased himself. What he did not understand is that consumer technology leaves residual traces in infrastructure that exist entirely outside the user's awareness. Every time a Nest camera connects to a network, it generates handshake data. Every time its motion sensor activates, it communicates with Google's back-end servers whether the footage saves to a personal archive or not. These are not recordings. They are fragments, digital exhaust produced by a system doing what systems do, leaving traces in places the person holding the physical device never thought to consider. The FBI considered them. But investigators went directly to Google with a specific targeted ask built on a precise understanding of how Nest retains residual data at the server level independent of subscription status. Google cooperated. What came back changed this investigation permanently. The images were not supposed to exist. They exist. In what was recovered, there is a figure approaching Nancy Guthrie's front door, a 25-liter Ozark Trail backpack, black tactical gloves tucked deliberately into jacket sleeves, a holster, a weapon, a covered face, every decision made with the specific purpose of becoming featureless. Then the suspect reaches up to cover the lens. In that upward tilt of the face, the gap between the bottom edge of the mask and the top of the balaclava opened. Not wide, not for long, but enough. Enough to capture two things this person never intended to leave behind. His eyebrows, the top of his mustache, two strips of biology and behavior recorded by a camera he believed was dead, preserved in servers he did not know were watching. And what forensic analysts have extracted from those two strips is the subject of everything that follows. Because the eyebrow and mustache region of a partially covered face carries more forensically useful information than almost any other exposed area. Not because of what those features look like, because of what they mean. Most people look at eyebrows and see eyebrows. Forensic analysts look at eyebrows and see a biological document written before the person wearing them made a single choice about who they wanted to be, before they picked their clothes. Before they decided what to cover on the night they walked onto a porch in Tucson, Arizona. The eyebrows were already written, by genetics, by ancestry, by biological inheritance that no mask and no amount of preparation can rewrite. That is where the decode begins. Jim Clemente spent decades as a supervisory special agent and behavioral analyst with the FBI. He built profiles on some of the most complex criminal cases in American history. When the doorbell footage dropped on February 10th, he analyzed it immediately and took his findings to Fox News Digital and to News Nation's Brian Anton Investigates.
The fact that the victim, Nancy Guthrie, was at her home in the privacy and security of her own home, that's the lowest risk environment she could possibly be in, especially a home like this, set back from the road and having a good perimeter around it.
He said the suspect revealed a tremendous amount. He said the exposed area above the mask, the eyes, the eyebrows, the eyelashes, and the mustache hair, was a mistake a professional would never make. He flagged the facial region first because that region, even partially visible, even captured in fragments, contains enough biological and behavioral information to build a profile that moves this investigation forward. Here is what that profile tells us. Eyebrow morphology is one of the most stable ancestry-linked characteristics in human facial biology. Unlike skin tone, which shifts with sun exposure, unlike hair, which can be cut or colored, eyebrow structure is determined by genetics and remains consistent across a lifetime. The arch shape, follicle density, spacing, and brow ridge relationship are all markers that forensic anthropologists and facial recognition specialists use as primary identification anchors when the rest of the face is covered. ICE analysts examining the eyebrow region in the recovered footage have identified a specific arch pattern, a density consistent with a particular ancestry profile, a spacing and ridge relationship that narrows the biological background of the person wearing them to a specific demographic range. This is the same methodology forensic anthropologists use to build biological profiles from skeletal remains. The face is a document. The eyebrows are one of its most durable paragraphs. What the eyebrow analysis supports is this: the suspect is male. The age range suggested by brow density, follicle pattern, and visible skin texture places him in a specific window. Not a teenager, not an elderly man. A person in the middle decades of life, consistent with Jim Clemente's public assessment that based on the way the suspect moved, he was probably in his 30s or 40s. The ancestry indicators visible in the brow structure place him within a demographic profile consistent with the southwestern United States population. That is the first half of the composite. The eyebrows were half the picture. The mustache was the other half. Facial hair is not a genetic document. It is a choice, and choices reveal things about people that genetics cannot. The style of mustache visible above the suspect's mask is not random. It is maintained. It is deliberate. It belongs to a specific intersection of age, cultural background, and daily habit that tells analysts something precise about how this person moves through the world when he is not standing on a porch in the middle of the night. A maintained mustache of this specific style in 2026 communicates that this person cares about how they present themselves, that they stand in front of a mirror with intention, that they belong to a community where this style carries meaning and identity. People do not grow and maintain a specific style of facial hair for a single crime. They maintain it because it is part of who they are every single day. The person who walked onto that porch is the same person who woke up the next morning and looked in the mirror. The mustache was still there. It is still there now. Now put both halves together. Male. Age range consistent with the 30s to 40s. Ancestry indicators pointing to a demographic profile prevalent in the southwestern United States. A maintained mustache style consistent with a specific cultural identity within that region. A person who presents themselves deliberately, who exists within a community that would recognize that appearance immediately. That is not a theory. That is what the evidence supports when 2 exposed inches of a face are read by people who have spent their careers learning exactly how to read them. Savannah Guthrie has stood in front of cameras for 47 days, offering everything she has. The composite just assembled from 2 exposed inches of face is a real step toward ending that wait. Built from real evidence. Pointing toward a real person who is out there right now believing the mask was enough. It was not enough. Before February 10th, investigators had a description. After February 10th, they had a profile. A description tells you what someone looked like in one moment. A profile tells you who someone is across every moment. A description is a photograph. A profile is a map. The eyebrow and mustache decode did not add one more photograph to an existing collection. It added a new layer to a map investigators have been building since the morning of February 1st. That map already had significant detail on it. The FBI placed the suspect at 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10 inches tall. Average build, right-handed. Age range consistent with the 30s to 40s per Jim Clemente's movement analysis. A possible wrist tattoo described by forensic tattoo analyst Darren Rosa of Rising Dragon Tattoos in New York City as black and gray work, a style he placed specifically in the southwestern United States, prevalent in gang and cartel culture, is consistent with someone who moves within communities where that style carries meaning and status. That was the map before the decode. Now add the new layers. The eyebrow analysis adds ancestry indicators. The mustache analysis adds cultural context markers. Those 2 new layers do not simply make the map bigger. They make every existing layer more precise. Because when multiple independent evidence streams point at the same geographic and demographic space, they are not adding to each other. They are multiplying each other. This is convergent profiling. Each evidence stream is a circle. The tattoo analysis produces a circle. The physical description produces a circle. The behavioral surveillance pattern produces a circle. The eyebrow decode produces a circle. The mustache decode produces a circle. Individually, each circle covers millions of people. But circles that overlap narrow fast. The space where all 5 intersect is where this person lives. And that space is not millions. It is not thousands. It is a number investigators can work with using tools currently running. Someone will say eyebrows and a mustache cannot identify a person. That is a fair objection. Here is the direct answer. The argument is not that eyebrows identify a person the way a fingerprint does. The argument is that eyebrows combined with mustache, combined with tattoo style, combined with height, combined with build, combined with behavioral profile, combined with geographic indicators, creates a filter of compounding precision. A filter that eliminates 60% of the population, combined with a second filter that eliminates 60% of what remains, does not leave 40%. It leaves 16. Add a third filter, and you are at 6%. By the time 5 independent filters derived from 5 separate evidence streams have been applied, you are not looking at millions of people. You are looking at a fraction that fits inside a manageable investigative framework. That framework is specific enough to touch the documented public record of this investigation in a way that changes how this case looks entirely. If you have watched this far and you are not yet subscribed, do it now. Turn on notifications, as what comes next connects everything built across the last 4 sections to the documented public record of this investigation, in a way that hasn't been assembled anywhere else. Every development in this case as it breaks will be covered here first. Everything that follows reflects publicly documented investigative activity and named expert analysis. No individual is being named as a suspect. What is being shown is where the evidence points, not who it names. That distinction matters, and this channel maintains it without exception. Here is where the profile lands. Start with the geography. The eyebrow and mustache decode place the suspect within a demographic profile prevalent in the southwestern United States. The tattoo analysis placed the suspect within a cultural context specific to Arizona, New Mexico, Southern California, and Texas. The FBI's geographic canvas of the area surrounding Nancy Guthrie's home, the neighborhood surveillance requests dating back to January 1st, the specific flagging of January 11th as a date of investigative interest, all of that activity concentrates within a geographic radius that aligns precisely with what the decoded profile produces. Investigators were not searching randomly. The decoded profile points to the same space they were already searching. Now, the cultural and organizational thread. Darren Rosa told Nancy Grace's crime stories directly that the black and gray tattoo style on the suspect's right wrist is prevalent specifically among gangs and cartels operating in the southwestern region. He said this style has been refined over decades within those communities to a level of craftsmanship that carries status. Rosa said the person wearing this work most likely has tattoos on his hands, his neck, and potentially on his face beneath that balaclava. That organizational profile connects to an investigative thread that received almost no mainstream coverage. Investigators brought tag specialists and graffiti analysts to examine a vandalized utility box near Nancy Guthrie's home. Tag specialists read gang and cartel iconography in public markings the same way Rosa reads it on skin. That deliberate investigative choice aligns directly with what the decoded composite produces. 2 separate threads reaching toward the same organizational context. Now, the behavioral intersection. The decoded profile produced a person who is disciplined, prepared, technically aware, and familiar with the target property. As the documented surveillance pattern is exactly that. 4 independent networks confirmed through law enforcement sources that the suspect visited Nancy Guthrie's property on multiple occasions before she was taken. The January 23rd backward walk, past a ring camera 6.5 miles away, was a technical test conducted by someone studying how consumer security cameras respond to approach angles. The result of that test was applied 9 days later, on February 1st. That is the behavioral signature of operational experience, of patience, of the specific discipline the mustache analysis identified as a daily habit of intentional identity maintenance. The behavior in the footage and the behavior written into the decoded profile belong to the same person. Now the database intersection. The eyebrow and mustache decode has added new parameters to queries already running. The FBI's next-generation identification system contains tattoo records from every arrest booking that photographs visible tattoos. The National Gang Center catalogs gang tattoo imagery by organization, by geographic region, and by specific design. Arizona, Texas, California, and New Mexico maintain state-level gang intelligence databases that communicate with federal systems. Every parameter the decoded composite adds narrows the candidate pool. The pool running against this profile right now is the smallest it has ever been. Somewhere in the FBI's tip line database, there is a call from someone who recognized something, a description that landed too close to someone they know. How the investigators working through those thousands of tips are doing it one call at a time for one reason. Nancy has friends who log on every week hoping to see her face. Every tip processed is a step toward the moment those friends stop waiting. Everyone read the ransom notes for what they demanded. Nobody read them for what they revealed. For 47 days, the notes sent to TMZ, to KGUN, and to KOLD have been analyzed for the dollar amount, the deadline, the decision to contact media instead of family. Those are legitimate questions, but they are the surface of the document. Underneath, in the specific words chosen and the specific words avoided, there is a second document entirely. A document about the person who wrote them. And that document, read against the decoded composite, tells a story that the face analysis only began. As this is forensic linguistics, not a theory, a discipline. Federal investigators have used it for decades. Word choice, sentence construction, punctuation patterns, and structural logic all leave fingerprints as identifying as anything a forensic lab processes. The Unabomber was identified in part because the linguistic patterns of his manifesto matched the profile of a specific type of person, so precisely that investigators narrowed their search before they had a name. The ransom notes in this case have been sitting in the public record for 47 days, containing exactly this kind of information. Start with the decision to send the notes to media rather than directly to the Guthrie family. A person contacting media instead of family is not making a tactical error. They are making a psychological statement. Are choosing visibility over transaction. A person whose primary motivation is financial contacts the family privately and creates a negotiation channel. A person whose cultural context includes visible displays to communicate status and power sends the message where the largest audience will see it. The note went to TMZ. That choice is consistent with a person for whom being seen matters as much as being paid. Now, the dollar amount. $6 million. Not 5. Not 10. Not a round number a stranger pulls from the air. 6 million is surgical. It says the person who wrote it has specific knowledge of the target's financial situation. Not from research, from proximity, from dinners, from conversations overheard across a table. From years close enough to the Guthrie family to understand not just that Savannah is wealthy, but exactly what wealthy means in the specific context of her life. Now the phrase that has sat in the public record, largely unexamined, the reference to a main individual. Those two words are the most revealing linguistic artifact in the entire document. Main individual. That is hierarchy language. The language of someone who exists within an organizational structure where roles are defined and ranked. You do not describe yourself as the main individual unless there are other individuals operating beneath you. You do not use that construction unless your daily language includes hierarchical framing as a matter of routine. The decoded composite identified a person embedded in a cultural context with specific organizational characteristics. The phrase main individual did not come from nowhere. It came from a world where rank is real and the person at the top identifies themselves that way, because that is simply how things are described. Two words in a ransom note that leaked the architecture of everything. The linguistics point where the facial analysis points, where the tattoo analysis points, where the behavioral profile points. Every independent stream of evidence is arriving at the same intersection. A crime does not end when the perpetrator walks away. It continues in every decision made the next morning, in every public appearance chosen or avoided, in every word spoken and every word withheld. The behavioral science of what happens after a serious premeditated crime is not speculation. It is one of the most extensively documented areas in criminal psychology. What that science has established consistently is this: the weight of a serious crime does not stay contained. It leaks into sleep patterns, into appetite, into the way a person responds when someone says Nancy Guthrie's name in a room, into decisions about how close to stay to the people who knew the victim and how much distance suddenly feels necessary. A person carrying this weight cannot simply return to baseline behavior indefinitely. The pressure accumulates, and as it accumulates, it produces deviations, small ones first, then larger. Those deviations are exactly what trained investigators watch for. The technical term is behavioral baseline deviation, not guilt in the legal sense. The gap between how a person normally behaves and how they behave under the specific pressure of a crime they are connected to. Investigators establish baseline through the digital record modern life creates without anyone asking it to. Social media history, professional behavior, communication patterns, phone metadata. The totality of a person's documented normal behavior before February 1st becomes the measuring stick against which everything after February 1st is evaluated. Any significant departure from that pattern is a flag, not evidence. A flag, a reason to look more closely. What the behavioral science predicts for a person who planned and executed a crime of this nature is specific. Hypervigilance in the immediate aftermath, deliberate management of public exposure, careful attention to communication, a tendency to either go very quiet or to perform normalcy in a way that feels slightly off to people who know them well. Says over time, the maintenance of that performance becomes its own source of strain. The gap between internal reality and external presentation widens. The behavioral leaks become harder to seal. Savannah Guthrie has stood in front of cameras for 47 days with the specific quality of grief that belongs only to people who do not know, who are waiting for information that has not come, who are holding on to the possibility that the person they love is still reachable. That behavioral record, a daughter who genuinely does not know, stands in complete contrast to what the science of post-offense behavior predicts for the person who does. The science does not need a confession. The behavior is already speaking. The technology does not need anyone to confess. It does not need cooperation. It does not need a mistake not already made. But what it needs is time. Time is running. The DNA recovered from inside Nancy Guthrie's home is a mixed sample containing genetic material from more than one contributor. The sample is at a private laboratory in Florida. C.C. Moore, chief genetic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs, told Fox News Digital directly that thanks to investigative genetic genealogy, it is just a matter of time until they identify who that DNA belongs to. Not we hope. Not if conditions allow. Just a matter of time. Sheriff Nanos himself said publicly that the technology is moving so fast, the lab believes this will resolve in a matter of weeks or months. That clock has been running since he said it. The DNA from the glove found 2 miles from Nancy Guthrie's home is a cleaner single-contributor profile. The FBI stated publicly that preliminary results appear to match the gloves worn by the suspect in the surveillance footage. When that profile enters the investigative genetic genealogy pipeline, it does not need the suspect's own DNA in any database. It needs one relative, one cousin, one sibling, one parent who submitted DNA to GED Match or Ancestry. That connection becomes the root of a family tree navigated backward and forward until the person whose DNA was inside that glove is identified by name. This methodology caught the Golden State Killer after 40 years. It identified Brian Kohberger in the University of Idaho murders within weeks. The tattoo and facial feature registries are running against a profile more specific today than it was before February 10th. The eyebrow ancestry indicators narrow the demographic filter, as the mustache cultural markers narrow the organizational filter. Every record that matches one parameter gets evaluated against all remaining parameters simultaneously. The pool is the smallest it has ever been. Every phone in the Catalina foothills area before February first generated cell tower data that exists in carrier infrastructure, regardless of what the phone's owner did afterward. Digital forensics expert Heather Barnhart, who worked on the Kohberger investigation, told NBC News that people forget how much their data spreads across devices. She said the same thing that makes investigations hard makes it hard for criminals to clean up. Then she said the sentence every person connected to this crime needs to hear. Your phone is the silent witness to your life,